I did not expect to love this game as much as I do. I haven't played the original System Shock, and I honestly don't know much about it. Just that it's kind of the spiritual ancestor of the immersive sim genre. So when this remake came out in 2023, I added it to my want to play list because, oh my gosh, some beautiful people reworked this classic. I have no excuse now not to play it. Still, I went in with tempered expectations because it's an old game at heart. I can't expect it to be as complex and gorgeous as Prey, for example. And, yeah, that was a good idea. If you play this game, you should probably also temper your expectations. Visually, I'd say System Shock has probably more in common with the old Dooms than with Prey. The developers went for a retro look, which I find totally endearing, but it has its drawbacks. The items are difficult to identify, the enemies look kinda comical, and the environments are so pixelated I struggle to guess which of the walls with blinky lights are interactable. The level design is also distinctly old-fashioned, meaning each map is a huge maze that may or may not make sense. In Prey, for example, the Talos 1 space station feels like a real place where people live and work. The Citadel, on the other hand, straight up feels like an old-fashioned computer game dungeon. Some maps are fairly plausible, others are kind of pushing it, and then there are ones that are just completely insane. I found navigation super confusing at first. Apparently, you can play this game with waypoint markers, which should make it easier. I opted not to have waypoints spelled out to me, which led to hours of tromping back and forth across the station trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do and where. But I loved it. I found it a wonderfully immersive experience, and being confused makes perfect sense in the context of the story. The setting is you're a hacker, simply called the Hacker. An unpleasant character and his goons force you to remove ethical restraints from Shodan. Shodan is the AI of a mining station called Citadel that's orbiting Saturn, so all hell breaks loose on Citadel, and that's where you also wake up. You've never been to Citadel before and have no friends there, so most of the time there's no one calling to explain the mission. You have to rely on audio logs and data sticks for information on where to go and what to do. Not gonna lie, it was a bit rough. Despite the fact that I loved the challenge and was like, oh yeah, let's do this, there were 2 times I had to give up and Google for help because I could not figure out what I was supposed to do. But overall, I find the gameplay experience satisfying. I assumed the game would be linear and that you couldn't go back once you reached a new area, but no. The map actually gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you unlock new levels of the station. Most of the time, I had multiple levels with exploration potential, and if I hit a wall in one place, I could try my luck somewhere else. For most of the game, you can go back to the starting area, which is great because it's one of the few places where you can heal for free. I also assumed System Shock would be more of a shooter, but while you definitely have to shoot things in it, the goal seems to be just to clear the area of enemies so you can explore and puzzle in peace. Combat in System Shock is the opposite of smooth. The character is slow, most of the weapons suck, ammo is scarce, and the hacker doesn't know how to toss a grenade to save her life. In my opinion, shooting is just a necessary evil in this game. The actually satisfying part, to me, is taking out Shodan's security cameras and CPU nodes. They're easy to destroy, the tricky part is finding them. With each camera, Shodan's influence in that station level goes down, and if you get the surveillance down to 0, you no longer have to worry about enemies respawning all over the place. This is the #1 thing that hooked me in System Shock. Finding the next camera and making Citadel safer for me, room by room. I love it! I started the game feeling scared and overwhelmed, especially once I realized how insanely big the station is, and all I'm holding in my hands is a lead pipe. Like, how am I supposed to do this? But by halfway, I already felt like a boss, because I had several levels under my control where I could come and go undisturbed. My #2 dopamine source are the doors. Citadel doesn't do big open spaces much. It consists of rooms and corridors with lots and lots of doors. I'm always excited to spot a new door because behind it could be a camera, some desperately needed ammo, or a murder bot that kills me in 2 seconds. I get killed a lot in this game, and the boss fights, oh my gosh, I find them absolutely nerve-wracking, even at the lowest difficulty. The bosses don't seem to have many hit points, but they really pack a punch. So I really have to hit them hard and fast, and if I get it right, the fight is over in like 5 seconds, but if not, I'm dead. Luckily, there are only a few boss fights in the whole game. I love how many different types of locks the doors have. Sometimes you need to complete a rewiring puzzle. Other times you need to enter a code or wave the right keycard at it. Some doors won't open until you've brought security below a certain percentage, and some are locked by a cyberspace minigame. The cyberspace minigame, I have to say, is the one and only thing I don't like about System Shock. It's just flying and shooting, and if you're into that, you might enjoy it, but I'm not, so I don't. The cyberspace environment is featureless, the enemies are boring, and the whole thing is too different from the rest of the game. It's just a tedious dexterity exercise. I really could have lived without it. But aside from the minigame, I enjoyed the puzzles and the random order they're introduced. It's hilarious how often I came across stuff that looked important. Various control rooms, shiny spare parts, a severed head. But no idea what the game wanted me to do with them. So make a note and come back later. I'm repeating myself, but I loved it. Going back and forth between areas, trying to figure out how to unlock more of the station is fun. It's not for everyone, and I totally get it if you don't like it. I spent way more time walking around looting and wondering where to go than actually fighting. Oh yeah, and standing in elevators. At this point, I basically hear the System Shock elevator music in my sleep. You can buy health items and the occasional weapon upgrade from vending machines. But in order to get money for your purchases, you have to recycle junk at recycle stations. Oh man, I love this detail. Recycling items in Prey is basically my favorite activity in that game. The process in System Shock is not as satisfying, but I still like it. Because sometimes I'm burned out on fighting and puzzling, but there's all this junk lying around and I'm out of coins, so I'll just be recycling for an hour. I also like Shodan, even though she's about as one-dimensional as a villain can get. She's evil, and that's pretty much all there is to say about her. She occasionally reacts to the player's progress with mocking remarks, and she's laid some traps along the way. I appreciate the effort. I just think it's so funny how inefficient Shodan is. We're on a space station. I'm pretty sure there would be more efficient ways to kill me than laboriously creating cyborgs and mutants to throw in my way. But it's okay, it kind of makes sense because Shodan literally sounds malfunctioning with all her stuttering and god delusions. She's obviously not at her sharpest. Anyway, I'm usually a huge sucker for complicated, nuanced storytelling and deep characters, so I'm surprised how much I love System Shock's super simple setting. And against all odds, I grew fond of the environment. Honestly, I think Citadel is butt ugly. Unlike in Prey, where I'm just staring at the gorgeous architecture of Talos 1 in awe, fantasizing about moving in there, Citadel just looks hideous to me. And yet I grew attached to it. I felt a genuine touch of sadness when I realized it's time to leave. The game is not even trying to appeal to emotions, it's really just a silent, nameless protagonist versus evil AI. And yet it managed to get me invested, or should I say immersed, or both. I'm impressed, I wasn't expecting it. I think this game does something right. It's ugly and clunky and unintuitive at times, but I had a good time saving the world from Shodan. I suddenly hope Night Dive will remake System Shock 2 as well, because I'd play it. Have you played any of the System Shock games? What did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching.